it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be my April TBR, which is sponsored in part by Ink Yard Press. For the month of April, I do have grand plans. Last month, I would say I read more than average in the literary fiction space, predominantly because I was very inspired to knock some books off my TBR. So this month, I do feel like I've kind of fallen squarely back into my fantasy tendencies. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into all the books I hope to read this month. The first book that's on my April TBR is A Forgery of Roses by Jessica S. Olsen, which is now officially out in stores. This is a new YA fantasy story that honestly has me hooked just on the synopsis alone. And this follows our main character, Myra, who has a secret magical gift, one that many would kill for. Myra's magical gift centers around her skill as an artist. Essentially, she's able to paint portraits, and any type of changes she makes to people's portraits impacts their real life bodies. And she has kept this secret her entire life from people who would blackmail, steal, or worse, try to control her power for themselves. At the beginning of this book, our main character Myra is desperate to keep her and her sister safe, especially after the passing of their parents. But unfortunately, her worst fears come to life when the governor's wife is beginning to blackmail her about her powers, as she has found out. She's essentially pressuring Myra to paint a portrait of her dead son in hopes of bringing him back to life. When Myra travels to the governor's mansion to take on this task, she quickly realizes that the death surrounding the governor's son does not appear to be an accident. Something very dangerous is lurking inside the glittering halls of this mansion. Myra cannot complete this portrait until she's uncovered this mystery surrounding the son, so she turns to the eldest son of this family for help, a dashing and mysterious red-headed poet. This book honestly sounds enchanting. I'm particularly drawn to the magic itself. This idea of portraits being able to impact people in real life just honestly sounds so cool. A Forgery of Roses is available now. I will leave a link down below if you guys want to learn more or shop this release, but this is the first book on my TBR. From there, I have two books I hope to finish this month, as I've started both of them. They're also a part of my smaller selection of literary fiction to read for the month as well. The first is If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. I started this book near the tail end of March, and honestly, I'm really enjoying it. I feel like this is going to be an emotional read and just one that's really going to leave me thinking, but so far the writing style has really drawn me in, and I really love that you shift through multiple points of views and perspectives. But this is a story set in modern day Seoul and basically follows a variety of women who all live within the same building. It explores concepts of sexism, unattainable beauty standards, misogyny, just a bunch of young women kind of like trying to seize their life, but how much beauty kind of impacts their circumstances in different ways. I'm really enjoying this, as I said so far. It's not very long, so I feel like I'll be able to finish this right at the beginning of the month, but so far I'm really liking this. The next book is a carryover from the month of February that I'm finally feeling like I'm mentally ready to finish, and that is A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. This is a book I read about 100 pages of a few months ago, and I could just tell it was going to be a very emotional ride, so I kind of put it to the side because I had read many books back to back that essentially made me sob, but now I feel like I am ready and willing to finish this book because honestly, I was loving the structure, the narrative quality, and the writing so much. But this is essentially like a dual perspective story, kind of connecting two characters through time and space. The first character we follow is Ruth, and she lives on like a remote island off the coast of the Pacific Northwest. And at the beginning of this book, she stumbles upon a Hello Kitty lunchbox that washes up on the shore of her home. She opens the lunchbox and it's full of a lot of interesting and odd objects. The thing that catches her eye most is a diary from a young girl named No in Japan. Shifting quickly, we then begin to follow No as she's sort of writing these entries in her diary. No herself is having a very hard time since her family has relocated back to Japan. She doesn't have many friends, she's bullied, and she finds a lot of solace kind of writing out these feelings in this diary. And she's also committed herself to kind of documenting the life of her grandmother before ultimately making a very big decision about her life itself. This book really combines elements of suspense, great characterization, and kind of breaking this boundary between writer and reader, because one of our main characters is kind of in the same position that we are. Again, I really loved what I've read so far. I'm looking forward to finishing this book this month, as I really feel like I'm going to love it and it will be a new favorite. Speaking of finishing things, I also want to finish or catch up on a few series this month. The first is The Fall of Fable by Josiah Bancroft. This is the fourth and final book to the Senlin Ascend series, which I love so very much. I mean, honestly, this series is by far and away one of my favorite high fantasy series out there. Just so unique and so original, and I can't wait to see how it's going to wrap up in this fourth installment. Each book has really escalated on itself in ways I could never even imagine. So I honestly have no idea what's going to happen in this, but I can't wait to find out. But this is a series that primarily follows our main character, Senlin. At the beginning of book one, he and his new wife travel to this mythical place called the Tower of Babel. This tower is ginormous. It's full of thousands of floors and even more people, with each floor kind of having its own flavor and political complexity that you have to navigate. Senlin has always dreamed of exploring this tower, but unfortunately, right upon his arrival, he and his wife get separated, and from there we follow Senlin as he traverses it in hopes of finding his lost wife. It's just full of so many twists and turns, interesting politics, magic, and innovation, and just all my favorite things in fantasy, and I can't wait to finish this series with the fourth and final installment. Next up, I also want to pick up The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. This is the third and final book to the First Law trilogy, which obviously I have been reading and loving through the end of last year and through this year. I'm so happy I picked up Joe Abercrombie this year for so many reasons, but I just really connect with his writing and his characters and just the slow burn nature of his fantasy books. So much happened in book 2 of the First Law trilogy, and I really can't wait to see how it's all going to unfold in book 3. And I also know that there's many other series kind of set in this world to enjoy after I complete this. So honestly, completing this first trilogy still feels like the beginning of a much longer journey, which is very exciting. But this is a grim, dark fantasy series that is very character-led. Though don't be fooled, the plot does really expand starting in book 2. We follow a variety of characters that honestly you should hate, but somehow love nonetheless. My favorite one being Glocta, who literally tortures people for a living, and yet I can't get enough of him. I can't wait to see how this is going to wrap up. So much is happening. Quests and magical legacies come to life. So much to love, so much to learn about, and I just can't wait for it. Speaking of a very long fantasy series, I also have Dragonhaven by Robin Hobb on my list, which is book 2 to the Rain Wild Chronicles. I read book 1 a few months ago and honestly really enjoyed it. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel kind of going into a new series, following new characters, but honestly, I love being back in a multi-POV Robin Hobb story. First and foremost, I just think Robin Hobb writes some of the most dynamic characters in fantasy. Particularly, I feel like her female characters are just so well written. Obviously, she is a woman, so that does make sense. And I just feel like we have so many women characters in different places in society with different interests, and all of these things in general I just find are very rare to find in fantasy, and this book is definitely chock full of so many interesting female characters. I do miss Fitz and the Fool, but I'm happy to be back in the Rain Wild area and kind of back with the live ship trader politics as well. Time has passed, and the consequences of the first 3 series are definitely playing out in this one, but it does feel kind of smaller in scope, which I appreciate, and honestly, I'm just kind of drawn in by everyone. I feel like in general, Robin Hobb fans love all of her books, but this series might read a little boring for some people, but honestly, I am just eating it up. I can't wait to learn more about some of the lore and the past magic and history of this land, and I feel like we're going to get more of that within this book. But naturally, I had to add a Robin Hobb book to my list for this month, especially because I'm dedicating myself so much to catching up on series. This was a must. Next up, I have a few new releases that have just really caught my eye and I want to read. The first is a shorter read, which I feel like is very necessary to break up some of these longer fantasy reads. That is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. Very curious to see what I think about this book. I've heard perhaps mixed things, but I think if I go in with low expectations, I can always be surprised. One of the elements of this book that really excites me is all of the illustrations throughout it. They're honestly stunning, and I really feel like are going to add to the overall ambiance of this crumbling manor-esque story. This follows our main character, Olivia, and she has always wondered who she really is and where she comes from. The only thing she has in regards to her family legacy is a crumbling journal left to her by her now passed mother. In this journal, her mother has always warned her to never travel back to the family manor, but when Olivia receives an invitation at the beginning beginning of the story to do just that, she decides to go and see it for herself. Once she arrives at Gallant, she quickly realizes that no one actually sent her the invitation, or at least no one is claiming to do so, and there seems to be so many mysteries to uncover within this place itself. Specifically, why did her mother die? Why do the shadows seem to be alive? And what is happening to her only living relative inside this home? I'm hoping this is atmospheric and bizarre. I generally do really enjoy V.E. Schwab's writing, so I'm hoping for good things here, but we shall see, and I will for sure let you know. The next book that is on my list is The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. Honestly, this catapulted to the top of my TBR after talking to Elliot about her thoughts on this. Basically, the synopsis of this book is kind of on purpose vague and doesn't really reveal that the narrator is actually a female apprentice to the main character, which I think they did on purpose to try to like not anger, I guess, men in the fantasy section, but for me, that made me so much more interested in this book. Basically, this follows one of our main characters, Sir Conrad von Volt, an emperor's justice who is a detective, judge, and executioner all in one, but these are dangerous times to be a justice. From there, it's basically described that von Volt is one of the land's best justices, but also the danger of the land is also increasing, with corruption and rebellion kind of threatening to overthrow the entire kingdom itself. And at the beginning of this book, him and his assistant are assigned to investigate a murder of an aristocrat in the land. But what really sold me and why I'm so excited to read this book is that this story is told from the point of view of the assistant and is set in the future. So it's written with like reflection, kind of going through not only her training, her thoughts on these different cases, and just all of that just really calls out to me, because obviously that's going to combine itself with hindsight, and I feel like there's going to be some great commentary as she reflects on her own skill level at the time. So I feel like this is going to be a great book that kind of combines elements of intensity, but hopefully humor. I was hooked. Say no more. I'm reading this book this month. Next, newer release I hope to read this month is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. I have been on a roll with like mythology, literary fiction touched with fantasy stories, and I really want to continue that momentum this month as well. Ever since this book came out, I really felt like it could be a new favorite for me. I just love lyrical fantasy books that are retellings of well-known mythology stories, and this particularly follows the Chinese moon goddess. This follows our main character Xing Yin, and growing up, she's used to kind of having a low profile and hiding, because growing up on the moon with her mother, she basically had to hide from the very fierce celestial emperor. But unfortunately, at the beginning of this book, her magic accidentally flares, alerting him of her presence. So from there, she has to flee the moon and disguise herself, entering the celestial empire. And from there, I believe she begins to take up the opportunity to train alongside the prince of the Celestial Empire. I'm hoping this is full of delightful and beautiful writing. Also, I'm hoping there is elements of romance. I've been kind of craving fantasy romance lately, and I hope that this will be able to deliver on this, but I've just heard so many amazing things about this. I also love the cover, and I don't know, I just feel like this could be a home run. Next up is another literary fiction option, and it is one I'm actually buddy reading with a friend IRL, which is always a good way to keep myself motivated and accountable to actually finish the book I say I'm going to finish. That is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Hello, future editing Reagan here. I definitely meant to say Cloud Cuckoo Land. Anyway, back to the TBR. I'm actually embarrassed I have not read this book yet, especially because I'm such a fan of this author's writing. I've read his short stories, his other releases, and in general, his vignette style just personally really calls out to me. Also, he tends to use this element of like bringing together unlikely characters from very different places and kind of slowly winding their narrative and stories together in a very satisfying way. And that is done with 3 characters within this story. The first 2 characters live in the 15th century, and it basically centers on the siege of Constantinople. One of the characters lives within the city itself, and the other is accidentally like forced conscripted into the army that's going to be sieging the city. And I expect that their lives and stories will begin to intersect. What really calls out to me is that there's actually a third character set closer to modern day, and somehow their story becomes intersected with these other characters from the 15th century. I'm not sure, but I do really love Anthony Doerr's writing, and I'm curious to see how this story itself is going to unfold. And the very last book that is on my April TBR is a bit of urban fantasy, romance, slow burn romance. Also, if you have some really good urban fantasy stories that has a central romantic plotline, please leave me some recommendations down below because I am craving it like nothing else. But the book I'm picking up is Vision in Silver by Anne Bishop. This is the third book to the Other series, which I started rereading earlier this year and honestly have just fallen in love. It's so easy and fun to read, but it does have a very dynamic and intense plot line. This book basically is set in a world where others exist alongside humans. Others are basically comprised of supernatural creatures, from elementals to vampires to werewolves to other types of very powerful beings, and basically humanity has entered itself into this world and has tried to settle the land also controlled by the others. There's been a lot of conflict between these two groups, but recently there has been tenuous peace, and essentially the others control all the natural resources and kind of live more in remote landscapes, and humans kind of have deals with the others to access those natural resources but live primarily in cities and use those natural resources to make advancements that the others also like to enjoy. Here are human settlements. There's also these areas called courtyards, which are controlled by the others, which are large swaths of lands kind of in the city itself, which allows for some interaction between humans and others. But on these courtyards, human law does not apply. In book one, enter one of our main characters, Meg, and she is a blood prophet who has just escaped from the compound she has been held her entire life. On fleeing this compound, she enters the other's courtyard in hopes of not only finding a job, but also hoping to be able to lay low as her previous employers are on the hunt for her, but because human law does not apply here, she would be safe. Our other main character is Simon, and he's very suspicious of his new human liaison he just hired, Meg, and from there you basically follow Meg as she becomes situated and settled in this courtyard. You see her become introduced to so many new things she had never previously been able to have, from friendship to having a job to having her own space. Seeing Meg come into herself is honestly one of my favorite parts of this story. It is a very character-focused story, and it's also very slow burn, which I appreciate, but there is a heightening of politics happening within this series as well. Particularly, there's a rising tension between humans and the others, which is explored within this book, and honestly it really keeps me turning the pages. Book two was particularly intense, and I feel like that intensity is going to carry on into book three. I read these books so fast, and there's a super slow burn romance here. I'm talking like K-drama level slow burn, which I just find to be delightfully entertaining, and I honestly can't wait to read this. Alrighty guys, that is my April TBR. Please let me know down below some books you hope to get to this month, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!